I want you to imagine, just for a moment, that you are walking into like a vast, beautifully lit museum gallery.
Oh, love that feeling.
Right. Your footsteps are echoing lightly on the hardwood floor. And you turn a corner, and there, bathed in the solitary spotlight, is a striking, centuries-old African wooden sculpture.
Just commanding the whole room.
Exactly. It's magnificent. And as you lean in to read that little white plaque mounted next to it, absorbing the authoritative text that tells you exactly what this object is and what it meant to the people who made it
You realize something wild.
Yeah, you realize that almost everything printed on that plaque is just fundamentally wrong.
It is a totally dizzying realization, isn't it?
It really is.
To stand in front of this masterwork of human creation, feeling its physical presence, and suddenly understanding that the institutional narrative we've wrapped around it is essentially just a projection of our own cultural assumptions. Because we humans desperately love to categorize. We love to label things. And historically, when the Western academic world encountered something outside its own paradigm, it often just, it forced that object into a box that felt comfortable.
Right.
Rather than doing the really hard work of understanding the object on its own terms.
Exactly. And today on this deep dive, we are basically tearing that plaque off the wall.
I love that.
We are going to look at some groundbreaking work, specifically Kate Ezra's 1986 Smithsonian publication. It's called A Human Ideal in African Art, Bamana Figurative Sculpture.
It's such a brilliant text.
It is. And opening this text, it doesn't feel like just reading some dry museum catalog. It honestly feels like walking into an auditorium and taking a front row seat for a masterclass lecture.
Oh, absolutely. She's just at the podium dropping knowledge.
Right, because Ezra actually went to Mali. She sat with the Bamana elders, and she delivered this lecture through her research that just completely shatters decades of Western assumptions.
It's a complete paradigm shift. She combines this gritty, on-the-ground field research with deep oral histories, and she synthesizes art history, anthropology, philosophy, all of it.
And it forces us to reevaluate, the entire intelligence and intentionality behind these works.
Yes. The Bamana people didn't carve these figures just to, sit silently in glass cases.
Or to serve as, primitive idols.
Exactly. They carved them to encode a radical, highly sophisticated philosophy of gender, power, and human survival.
Okay, so let's unpack this, because for you listening right now, whether you're, prepping for an art history seminar, catching up on anthropology, or just someone who loves having your worldview delightfully upended, this is going to change how you look at the actual mechanics of art.
It really is.
So to understand the breakthrough of Ezra's masterclass lecture here, we first have to look at the wall we were hitting.
Right, the old assumptions.
Yeah. What exactly was that comfortable box that Western scholars were forcing Bamana art into, back in the mid-20th century?
Well, the Western academic establishment at that time, led by scholars like Robert Goldwater and Karl Kurzweil, they looked at Bamana figurative sculpture through a remarkably narrow lens.
Extremely narrow.
They basically wrote the rule book for how Westerners were supposed to interpret these figures. And according to their assumptions, Bamana fowls really only fell into three main clichés.
Let me guess.
They were supposedly for fertility rituals, they were for ancestor worship, or they were part of a twin cult.
It just feels so reductive.
It is.
It's like looking at the entire history of European painting and deciding everything is just a weather report because it has clouds in it.
That's a very apt comparison. It was this purely utilitarian, almost, primitive view of what the art was doing.
Right.
The underlying colonial assumption was that if an African carver created a human figure, it must be driven by base-level survival instincts. Like, they must be terrified of famine, desperate for children, or trying to appease angry spirits.
So no room for high art.
None. It left absolutely no room for complex philosophical expression or even just purely aesthetic allure. Kurzweil, for instance, he observed young Bamana girls dancing with these wooden figures.
Okay.
And he immediately wrote down that this was purely a right to ensure their future childbearing capabilities.
Wow. He sees girls holding sculptures and immediately jumps to primitive fertility rate.
Exactly.
It completely strips away any nuance or, intellectual agency from the people actually participating in the dance.
It really does.
But this is where Ezra's masterclass really begins. She goes into the field and she actually asks the Bamana elders what these figures are for.
A novel concept asking the people who made them.
Right. And the terminology they use completely upends that entire Western framework.
Precisely. When Ezra asks the elders to categorize these sculptures, they don't talk about ancestors or desperate fertility magic. They use very specific terms. They call them nyenaje, which translates to things used in performance, and mafile or laji, which literally translate to things to look at or decorations.
Okay, I have to admit, I'm struggling with that translation a bit.
How so?
Things to look at sounds so incredibly passive. Like, if we are talking about objects that are the centerpieces of these high-stakes, deeply significant cultural rituals, calling them decorations feels like a massive understatement.
It does sound like that to us, yeah.
Am I missing something about how the Bamana define a decoration? It sounds like calling the Sistine Chapel like a nice coat of ceiling paint.
What's fascinating here is that we were really bumping up against the limitations of English translation and, our own cultural biases about the word decoration.
Okay, explain that.
In the Bamana worldview, calling something a thing to look at does not diminish its spiritual or cultural weight at all. In fact, it defines its precise operational mechanism.
This operational mechanism.
Yes. For the Bamana, visual allure is a vehicle for power. Art is literally a magnet. It is engineered to attract your attention, to focus your eye, and thereby direct your thoughts.
Ah, so the beauty isn't incidental.
Not at all.
The beauty is the technology making the ritual work.
Exactly. The aesthetic appeal is the hook. During a complex, multi-layered ritual, which, might involve music, dance, esoteric language, massive crowds, these sculptures act as visual anchors.
They hold the whole thing together.
Yes. They make the performance more captivating, and therefore the philosophical or spiritual work being done becomes more effective. And we see this principle applied everywhere in Bamana culture.
Everywhere.
Yeah, even purely utilitarian objects. Things like heddle pulleys used in weaving, or wooden door locks. They are frequently adorned with intricately carved human figures.
Just to make them magnetic.
Simply to increase their eye-catching appeal, to draw the eye.
That reframes the entire concept. It's not just adding a frill, it's adding a center of gravity to an event or an object.
Right.
And there is a specific example in Ezra's text that shows just how active, how structurally vital these sculptures can be. It moves them so far beyond just something you passively look at.
Oh, I know what you're going to bring up.
Yeah, we have to talk about the Como Society rituals, because this totally blew my mind.
It's incredible. So the Como Society is one of the most powerful, secretive, and feared initiation associations among the Bamana.
Like a secret society.
Yes. It deals with profound esoteric knowledge, supernatural protection, policing the community. Now, initiation into Como typically involves rigorous physical and psychological trials, and centrally it involves circumcision.
Right.
But a unique problem arises. What happens if an uncircumcised adult man, perhaps someone from a neighboring culture who wants to gain the powerful protection of the Como Society, seeks admission?
Right, because undergoing adult circumcision in a rural, highly charged ritual environment is, well, it's a massive, potentially dangerous barrier to entry.
It's incredibly risky. So the Bamana developed this conceptually stunning solution. The man can be initiated by proxy.
By proxy?
Yes. They carve a specific wooden human figure for this exact purpose, and the ritual circumcision is performed by physically marking the anatomy of the wooden sculpture.
Wait, they actually cut the wood.
They mark the wood, yes.
The wood essentially absorbs the ritual trauma.
Precise.
The spiritual transformation happens to the human, but the physical requirement is fulfilled by the wood. The sculpture isn't a symbol. It's an active surrogate body participating in a high-stakes medical and spiritual procedure.
It perfectly illustrates the dynamic relationship the Bamana have with their figurative art. The sculpture does work. It accomplishes a task.
It's a tool.
A very powerful tool. And to truly understand the heavy lifting these figures do, we have to look at the specific, grueling environments where they are deployed.
Right.
We need to leave the theory behind and look at the actual life cycle of a Bamana citizen. We have to look at the Joe Initiation Society.
Which brings us to the youths. We see how the Bamana use art as a surrogate, but how do they use it to shape the minds of the next generation?
This is where it gets really intense.
Because the Joe Society operates primarily in the southern Bamana region, right? And the initiation process into Joe is absolutely brutal. This isn't just like a casual coming-of-age ceremony.
No, it is a total foundational reconstruction of the self. The initiation process is centered around a concept called Jofaga.
Which means?
It translates literally to killing in Joe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is a process of symbolic death and rebirth. The young boys are taken from their families and subjected to intense physical and psychological stress. The community uses isolation, sleep deprivation, complex physical trials to essentially strip away their childhood identities.
How exactly does a community achieve that kind of psychological reset? I mean, that's heavy.
By entirely severing the initiate's connection to their past selves, they are symbolically killed so that they can be revived the next day as entirely new entities.
And these new entities have a name.
Yes, Jogan, which means children of Jo. Following this symbolic resurrection, they spend an extended period in retreat, isolated deep in the bush, recovering and learning the secret, esoteric knowledge of the society from the elders.
So they're completely removed from regular village life.
Completely. And when they finally return to the village, they are treated as completely different beings. They don't even wear normal clothing.
What do they wear?
They are dressed in massive protective fiber costumes that make them look completely alien compared to the normal woven cotton clothes of the village.
In this return from the bush, it kicks off a massive, highly structured period of travel, right?
Yes.
It's a process called Joba-yaala, or simply yaala, which means to travel.
Right.
These newly initiated youths form troops, and they spend months traveling from village to village. They perform the songs and dances they learn in the bush to earn gifts of money, cotton, and food.
But they aren't just wandering randomly.
Right. There is a very specific social map they are following, and this is where the art takes center stage. During these travels, the boys carry specific wooden sculptures, the most prominent being the nyenaje figures.
And nyenaje translates to Little Nile. Nile's a traditional name given to a firstborn daughter, but in this context, it translates broadly as pretty little one or little ornament.
And the aesthetic of these nyenaje figures is incredibly specific and striking.
It really is.
Because when you look at photos of these nyenaje figures in Ezra's book, they don't look soft or inviting at all. They look almost aggressive. Sharp angles, perfectly straight posture. What is that physical design trying to communicate to the viewer?
The visual style is highly stylized to project a very specific Bamana ideal of youthful female beauty and intense contained energy.
Contained energy. I like that.
They're always female, always standing upright. They are characterized by this sharp geometry. They have prominent conical breasts that project sharply and defiantly straight out from a flattened chest.
Okay.
They have broad, strong shoulders, incredibly thin, elongated waists, and exaggerated jutting buttocks. Art historians actually refer to the abrupt transition from the torso to the legs as the Poland socket style.
Oh, because it's so rigid.
Exactly. And their faces are rendered cubistically, with flat planes intersecting at sharp striking angles.
And they aren't just bare wood, right?
No, the carvers incise intricate geometric patterns into the wood that represent the actual scarification marks that adolescent Bamana women would traditionally receive.
Wow. And when the boys display them, they take meticulous care of them. They wash them, they rub them with oil until the black wood gleams, and they drape them in brightly colored beads, tiny loincloths, and metal jewelry.
They are engineered to pull your eye from across the village square.
Right. Now, if we connect this to the bigger picture in the lecture, consider the incredible social subtext of what is happening here.
It's wild.
These young boys have just endured a grueling ordeal that symbolizes their entry into manhood. Yet during this specific traveling period, they are under strict vows of celibacy.
Yeah.
They are forbidden from acting on their new adult status, and yet they are carrying these gleaming, hypersexualized wooden figures that represent the absolute pinnacle of idealized marriageable female beauty.
The tension must be palpable.
Oh, absolutely. And where are they carrying them? This is the strategic genius of the Yaala travels.
Okay, yeah, let's talk about the map.
They are predominantly traveling to specific villages where their older sisters or other female relatives have already married and settled.
Because in Bamana culture, marriage alliances are reciprocal.
Exactly. If Village A sends brides to Village B is expected eventually to send brides back to Village A. So these celibate, newly minted men are parading these idealized female statues directly into the villages where they are culturally expected to find their future wives.
It is a brilliantly sophisticated social mechanism. The nyenaje figures serve as a highly visible, undeniable advertisement of the initiate's ultimate goal, which is marriage, alliance, and the continuation of the lineage.
An advertisement in wood.
Exactly. The vows of celibacy create a contained energy that makes the display of these figures even more potent. The boys are standing in the village square, essentially declaring, "We have survived the bush, we are men now, we understand the ideal of beauty and partnership, and we are ready to enter into the complex social contract of marriage."
And the actual performances are so full of life and humor, they aren't super solemn.
No, not at all.
When the boys arrive in a new village, they don't just set the statue on the ground reverently. They hand the nyenaje statue to the local youth leader. They joke with him, calling the statue his girlfriend, and they playfully demand money from him if he wants to, spend the night with her.
It's a public theatrical negotiation of sexual tension and social expectations, using the wood as the medium.
Right. And the life cycle of the object mirrors the exact life cycle of the initiates themselves.
Oh, the widow face.
Yes. After the months of traveling are over and the boys finally return home to formally re-enter village life as adult men ready for marriage, the nyenaje statue is stripped of all her beautiful beads, her jewelry, and her oiled sheen.
All of it.
The initiates literally refer to the bare wooden figure as a widow, susamusa. She is put away in storage until the next group of boys is initiated 7 years later. Her active, alluring phase has ended, exactly as the boys' liminal searching phase has ended.
To really drive home the primal, elemental appeal of what these figures represent, Ezra's text provides this amazing quote from a Malinka bard,
Oh, I love this part.
a master singer named Seydou Kamara. He sings, "A well-formed young girl is never disdained. Cooked rice is never refused, no lie."
Cooked rice.
It is the perfect metaphor for this stage of life. In that agrarian environment, cooked rice is sustenance.
Right, it's survival.
It is life itself. It is universally desired and absolutely necessary. Comparing the allure of a young woman to cooked rice strips away any pretense. It acknowledges that the drive for partnership and procreation is as fundamental and as undeniable as the drive to eat.
And the nyenaje figures are the visual embodiment of that hunger and that sharp, youthful energy required to pursue it.
Exactly.
So we see how these young men use the nyenaje figures to project an idealized future. But eventually that youthful celibacy ends, the marriages happen, and the reality of adult life sets in.
Reality always hits.
Always. How does Bamana art shift when it has to address not the promise of life, but the agonizing struggle to actually create and sustain it? Because once you get the cooked rice, life gets incredibly heavy.
This is where Ezra's lecture takes us into the world of the elders.
Okay, set the scene for us.
While the young initiates are running around the countryside with their sharp geometric nyenaje figures, the elders back in the villages are managing a completely different set of rituals, with a completely different class of sculptures. These rituals revolve around the annual celebrations of the Jo Society and an affiliated institution specifically called Guan.
And Gran is a society laser-focused on one of the most painful burdens a family can face, which is infertility.
Yes. For the Bamana, as in many cultures, children are the ultimate source of pride, fulfillment, and social status. They are the workforce, the caretakers of the elderly, the continuation of the bloodline.
So the pressure is immense.
Immense. The inability to conceive causes profound psychological and social anxiety. It can threaten the stability of marriages and fracture entire village alliances.
Right.
Gran is a specialized institution designed to address this exact crisis.
Yeah.
And unlike the traveling boys with their portable figures, the elders display massive, mature, incredibly heavy wooden figures.
The big ones.
Yes, these are called Jomogani, which means little people of Jo, and Guandin, wooden things of Guan.
The ritual surrounding these massive figures is deeply poignant. I mean, imagine a woman who has been struggling for years to have a child, feeling the weight of her family's expectations.
It's heartbreaking.
During the annual day of Guan, the elders bring these huge, ancient sculptures out of their sanctuary and line them up in the public space. And the women suffering from infertility come forward. They don't just pray from a distance.
Yeah, it's very tactile.
They bring hot water, soap, and precious oils. They physically wash the wooden figures, scrubbing them, anointing them, and praying over them. They make these desperate binding promises, vowing that if the spiritual power of Guan grants them a child, they will dedicate that child's life to the society.
And the children born after these rituals are often named directly after the sculptures themselves,
Wow!
forever linking their human lives to the intervention of the divine wood. It is a profound tactile interaction. The washing of the sculptures is an act of deep care, of supplication, and of intense, vulnerable hope.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. Let's look at the actual physical style of these Guan figures, because the contrast with the nyenaje is staggering.
It's night and day.
If you put a nyenaje figure next to one of these Guan figures, like the famous mother and child sculpture held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, they look like they were conceived by entirely different civilizations.
They really do. And the visual divergence is highly intentional and deeply meaningful. We discussed the nyenaje as being Angular, sharp, cubist with breasts that just straight out defiantly.
Right, that aggressive, contained potential.
The Guan figures are the exact opposite. They're fluid, massive, rounded, and highly naturalistic. The transitions between the body parts are completely smooth. The torso merges naturally into the hips.
And the posture is different too.
Yes, and the breasts don't jut out. They fall heavily, curving downward over the torso, suggesting a body that has already nursed children. The heads are massive, rounded ovoids.
The structural shift in the art perfectly mirrors the structural shift in the human experience.
Oh, definitely.
We have moved from the fleeting, sharp, almost electric energy of youthful attraction to the grounded, heavy, enduring reality of mature character and parenthood. The Nilini is an advertisement. The Guan figure is the actual heavy lifting of life.
Exactly. The Guan figures project sheer gravity. They represent people who have lived, who have suffered, who have made sacrifices, and who have accumulated real power and wisdom.
So who are these specific figures?
To understand this, we have to look at the two central figures that anchor these Guan ensembles. The absolute centerpiece is always a seated mother holding a child across her lap, and she is called Guandusu.
Guandusu.
Yes. And she is usually accompanied by a male counterpart, a seated figure called Guantiji.
Okay, let's break down the name Guandusu because it tells you everything you need to know about how the Bamana actually view motherhood.
That's a great name.
It's a compound word. Dusu translates to soul, but in the Bamana lexicon, it also means passion, courage, and even anger.
Anger, right.
And Guan refers to the society itself, but as an adjective, it means hot, hard, or difficult. So, Guandisu isn't some sweet, passive, maternal figure holding a baby. She is a woman with a hot, hard, courageous, and potentially angry soul. She embodies fierce conviction.
This completely shatters the historical Western stereotype of the passive, gentle, maternal figure.
Totally shatters it.
The Bamana recognized that bringing life into a harsh world, protecting it from disease and famine, and ensuring the survival of the lineage requires an incredible amount of grit, ferocity, and supernatural power. Guandusu is a titan.
She is a titan, and this titan leads us to perhaps the most radical revelation in Ezra's entire masterclass, because when we look closely at how Guandusu is carved, the Bamana art completely rewrites the rules on gender dynamics that early Western observers thought they understood.
Right, the early ethnographers got this so wrong.
Historically, when early Western ethnographers and colonial administrators looked at Bamana society, they saw exactly what they wanted to see, which was a highly patriarchal structure.
Right, because men held the visible political offices, descent was traced strictly through the male line, and men's initiation societies seemed to completely dominate public life.
So they concluded, rather quickly, that Bamana women were structurally inferior and entirely subservient.
But the Guan sculptures tell a completely different, infinitely more complex story.
Yes, they do.
If you look at the specific attributes carved onto these figures, a radical truth emerges. First of all, both the male figure, Guantigi, and the female figure, Guandusu, are depicted seated on stools or chairs.
And seating is important.
Very. In the Bamana visual vocabulary, being seated isn't just a posture. It is a declaration of immense honor, authority, and stability.
But the most shocking element to those early Western eyes is what these figures are actually wearing. Both the male and the female figures are heavily laden with objects of intense supernatural power.
Yeah, the details are amazing.
They wear amulets strapped tightly to their arms and chests. They wear animal horns filled with magical medicines. And critically, both the male and the female figures are explicitly depicted wearing the distinct, charm-studded hats associated with Manda hunters and sorcerers.
That the hunters had on the mother.
It's as if we found a classical portrait of a European queen, but instead of holding a jeweled scepter, she's holding the Pope's staff in one hand and the top general's bloodied sword in the other.
That's a great visual.
The artist isn't just saying she's powerful, they are specifically giving her the symbols of the absolute highest spiritual and martial authority in the culture.
Yes.
So what exactly does a hunter signify in Bamana culture? Because we aren't just talking about someone who, tracks deer for food in the woods.
Not at all.
Right.
In Mande culture, the hunter, the danso, is the ultimate archetype of the hero. They are the masters of the wilderness, and the wilderness is seen as a chaotic, incredibly dangerous realm filled with aggressive spirits and wild magic. To survive and succeed in the bush, a hunter cannot rely merely on physical strength or a good aim. They must possess immense esoteric knowledge, profound magical power, and deep spiritual fortitude. They are diviners, healers, and sorcerers.
So the hat is a big deal.
The charm-studded hat is the crown of this ultimate supernatural mastery.
So when a Bamana carver takes a block of wood, creates a statue of a mother holding a child, places the hat of a master hunter on her head, and straps a hunter's dagger to her upper arm, they are making a massive, undeniable structural statement.
A huge statement.
The artist is giving the mother the exact same supernatural and moral weight as the greatest male heroes in the culture's history.
It is an absolute assertion of the equivalence of power. The sculptures publicly declare that women have equal access to and equal capability of wielding the highest forms of supernatural and moral authority necessary to sustain society.
And Ezra points out that this isn't just some visual anomaly invented by one rogue carver.
Right, it's not a one-off.
It is deeply structurally supported by the oral literature of the Mande peoples. The oral epics are incredible. The source text highlights the story of Kambili, who is this legendary mythical hunter hero. But when you listen to the actual epic, Kambili isn't the one who saves the day.
It's his wife, Kumba.
Yes. In the epic, the community is being terrorized by a shape-shifting supernatural lion.
Terrifying.
Kambili is a great hunter, but his magic is stymied. He cannot defeat it. It is Kumba, who is described in the song as a woman to surpass all women, who possesses the deep insight to recognize the lion's true magical nature.
She sees what he can't.
And it is Kumba who orchestrates the incredibly complex, dangerous supernatural maneuvers required to obtain the magical ingredients necessary to defeat the beast. Without the woman's superior esoteric knowledge and power, the male hero entirely fails.
The bards who sing these epics make this dynamic explicit. There are quotes in Ezra's research that just give you chills.
Give us one.
The bard sings, "A man's power comes from his mother." And even more directly, if you are not afraid of females, you're not afraid of anything.
Wow. If you are not afraid of females, you're not afraid of anything.
It is a profound cultural acknowledgement that the capacity for greatness, for world-altering magic, and for incredible danger resides equally in women. The Gwandusu figure, sitting there with her heavy breasts, her nursing baby, and her hunter's hat, is the physical, carved embodiment of that awe-inspiring, terrifying female power.
But Gwandusu and Gwantiji don't just sit alone in the dark, right? They are surrounded by an entire cast of characters. And that brings us to the theoretical core of the entire Bamana worldview, because these figures are part of something much larger.
Exactly. These massive Jo and Gwan figures are never displayed in isolation. They are always presented in carefully curated ensembles. When modern Bamana people describe these public displays to researchers, they use the word théâtre.
Like theater.
Derived from the French word for theater, yes.
Yeah.
Or they simply call them Bamana movies.
Bamana movies. I love that. It implies narrative, drama, a script, and a cast of characters playing highly specific roles.
Yep.
So you have the central, incredibly powerful couple, the Titan mother and the master hunter. And surrounding them are the companions. Who are these companions?
The companions are a diverse cast. You have male figures carved, holding musical instruments, actively playing. You have female figures carrying large water vessels perfectly balanced on their heads.
Okay.
You have female figures respectfully lifting their breasts with their hands. And you have male figures carved with their heads turned sharply to the side, explicitly averting their gaze.
So to understand this theater, we have to understand the script they're performing. And the script is based on the deepest philosophical divide in Bamana thought. It's a tension between two elemental forces, Badenya and Fedenya.
This is the crux of it all.
Can you walk us through how these two concepts actually operate in reality? Because this is the key to the whole deep dive.
To understand Badenya and Fedenya, we have to look at the structural reality of a traditional polygamous Bamana household.
Okay, let's look at the household.
Badenya literally translates to mother-childness. It refers to the relationship between children who share the exact same mother. In this household dynamic, children of the same mother share a distinct, unbreakable bond of mutual survival and support.
Because they're in it together.
Right. Therefore, in the broader Bamana philosophy, Badenya represents the forces of unity, cooperation, social obligation, submission to authority, and the maintenance of the status quo. It is the centripetal force, the gravity that holds the community together and keeps the peace.
And the opposing force is Fedenya.
Yes, Fedenya translates to father-childness. In a polygamous household, children share a father, but they are often put into positions of intense rivalry for that father's limited resources, his attention, and his inheritance.
So it creates competition.
That structural friction creates a centrifugal competitive energy. Thus, Fedenya represents individuality, intense competition, ambition, heroics, and the drive to break the rules to elevate one's own name and move society forward. It is the disruptive force of progress and personal glory.
Think about your own workplace or family dynamic for a second.
It applies everywhere.
You have the fenw types, the ambitious disruptors, the superstars who push things forward, break the rules, and get the big wins, but who can also be incredibly destructive to morale.
We all know one.
And you have the fenw types, the glue people, the ones who organize the meetings, compromise, sacrifice their own ego, and keep the peace. The Bamana recognize that human society fundamentally requires both, but they are constantly in tension. When you look at this sculptural ensemble, you are essentially looking at a brilliantly carved HR diagram for human survival.
That is a perfect way to conceptualize it. It is a visual essay on the absolute necessity of balancing these two opposing forces. The central figures, Gwandusu and Gwantiji, bristling with amulets, holding weapons, and wearing hunters' hats, represent the ultimate pinnacle of fenw.
The rule breakers.
They are the extraordinary individuals, the heroes capable of dangerous magic, massive change, and the ferocious defense of the community.
But the companions surrounding them represent fenw. The male musicians are there to praise the heroes, submitting their own voices to the greatness of others. The men averting their gaze are showing deep respect and deference to higher authority, physically refusing to look a powerful elder directly in the eye.
And the women lifting their breasts are offering a gesture of profound respect and maternal blessing.
And perhaps the most vivid illustration of this tension is the figures of the women carrying water vessels on their heads.
Yes, the water carriers.
In traditional Bamana daily life, carrying water, especially heating water for a husband's bath or for arriving guests, is the quintessential grinding domestic chore.
It's hard work.
It is deeply tied to submission, domestic harmony, and the daily fulfillment of social obligations. There are countless Bamana women's songs that lament or celebrate the complex dynamics of a household based entirely around the humble act of heating bathwater.
So the carver takes this figure of a woman performing the most mundane, humble act of domestic service, the ultimate expression of fenw, the glue of the household, and places her right next to the massive figure of Gwandusu, the fierce, magic-wielding Titan mother who represents the ultimate fenw.
Precisely, because the profound philosophical lesson of the Bamana movie is that society dies without both. If a community has too much fenw, too much submission, too much cooperation, too much fear of standing out, the society stagnates.
It can't grow.
It cannot defend itself against predators, and it cannot innovate to survive a famine. But if a community has too much fenw, too much unchecked ambition, too much individual glory-seeking, too much magic, the society devolves into chaos and tears itself apart from the inside.
You need the extraordinary superstars who can slay the supernatural lion.
But you absolutely need the people willing to carry the water, sweep the compound, and sing the praises to keep the community functioning on a random Tuesday.
The sculptural ensemble forces the entire village to gather in the square, look the full spectrum of the human ideal, and recognize that every single role, from the sorcerer to the water carrier, is vital for collective survival.
It is a breathtakingly nuanced understanding of sociology and human psychology, encoded in wood and presented as public, interactive theater.
And the final revelation of Ezra's masterclass is just how long this specific theater has been running. We aren't talking about a recent philosophical development.
Right, which brings us to the deep history.
This part is amazing.
When Kate Ezra and other researchers were in Mali interviewing the village elders about these massive Jo and Guan figures, a very distinct timeline began to emerge.
Because the styles were so different.
While the sharp geometric nyenaje figures, the ones carried by the traveling youths, were actively being carved well into the 1960s, the elders insisted that the heavy, fluid Guan figures were entirely different.
They knew they were old.
The elders stated emphatically that these massive sculptures were not contemporary. They were carved long before any living memory, handed down through countless generations.
And when Western science finally caught up to what the elders were saying, the results were staggering.
What did they do, like radiocarbon dating?
Exactly. Researchers took tiny, meticulous samples of the wood from these Guan figures, as well as samples from stylistically related terracotta figures found in the inland Niger Delta, and subjected them to rigorous scientific dating.
Carbon-14 and thermoluminescence testing.
Yes.
And when researchers finally subjected these figures to those tests, the results didn't point to the 19th century. They blew right past the colonial era.
Far past it.
The data proved unequivocally that these specific wooden and terracotta figures date back to the Middle Ages. specifically between the 14th and 16th centuries.
Think about the magnitude of that revelation. What does it actually mean that a complex, multi-character wooden sculpture ensemble has survived in the Western Sudan since the 1300s?
It changes the entire timeline of human intellectual history. It means that while the European Renaissance was just barely beginning to toy with the ideas of humanism, while artists in Italy were just starting to paint more realistic portraits of noblemen, Bamana artists in West Africa were already crafting highly sophisticated multi-character wooden theaters to map out the sociology of human survival.
It's mind-blowing.
It proves that this immensely complex philosophical system, the delicate structural balancing act of individual glory against community obligation, fenw and bedenya, and the profound, deeply rooted acknowledgement of the immense, equivalent supernatural power of women is not some modern adaptation.
Right, it's not a response to colonial contact.
It is an indigenous, centuries-old African intellectual and artistic tradition. The Bamana have been visually debating and teaching the fundamental nature of the human ideal for over 600 years, using these exact carved forms.
It is absolutely staggering to think about. To go back to that museum gallery we started in, to look at that mother and child figure sitting under the spotlight, realizing it was carved when the Mali Empire was at its zenith.
And knowing, finally, that it was designed not as a primitive idol for a generic fertility cult, but as a dense, brilliant philosophical textbook on how to balance the intense forces of human nature.
It really makes you want to go back to the museum and just stand in front of it again.
It does. So as we bring this masterclass to a close, let's briefly recap the incredible journey Kate Ezra's text has taken us on.
We covered a lot of ground.
We started by ripping up the museum plaque and smashing the simplistic colonial clichés that labeled all African art as generic fertility dolls or simplistic ancestor worship.
We discovered the sharp, geometric, magnetic allure of the Nilini figures, used strategically by young men to navigate the complex social map of marriage alliances.
We then shifted to the elders, uncovering the massive, heavy Guan figures that tackle the agonizing, real-world burdens of infertility through deeply tactile, vulnerable washing rituals.
We decoded the hidden language of the hunter's hat and the medicine horns, revealing a society that honors the fierce, equivalent, world-altering power of women.
And finally, we pulled back to see the entire Bamana movie, a centuries-old theatrical display designed to teach the community that both the ambitious hero and the humble water carrier are absolutely essential to survival.
It is a profound testament to the enduring power of art as a vehicle for complex human thought. The Bamana carvers didn't just shape wood. They carved their deepest sociology, their existential fears, and their highest intellectual ideals into forms that have survived the centuries, waiting for us to finally learn how to read them.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to ponder as you go about your day. The Bamana created an entire ensemble of sculptures to remind their community that both the ambitious superstar, the fenw, and the humble team player, the bedenya, are equally vital to human survival.
They understood they needed the hero with the magic hat, and they needed the person carrying the water.
Think about your own life, your own workplace, your own family dynamics. If you had to commission a master carver today to build a sculptural ensemble to represent the deepest values, the hidden powers, and the necessary tensions of your modern community, who would you place in the center, bristling with power? And who would you carve as the essential companions carrying the quiet weight of the everyday? Thank you to our expert for guiding us through this incredible lecture, and thank you for joining us on this deep dive.